Test. Hi, everybody. Can we have everybody start coming back? We need to be on time, please. So can everybody take their seats and have the people outside in the foyer start coming in and taking their seats, please? Again, the people that are out in the foyer, can you please make your way back into the ballroom? We're about to start in 1 minute. Actually, we would start now. Okay, as people are slowly milling in. Okay. Okay. Hope you had a good chance to have a good coffee break. So welcome back. While women have been worse affected by the global pandemic, women leaders have also been more effective. Now we're moving into the second discussion, which will be more on profiling effective leadership, transcending gender definitions. So I'd like to invite our moderator, Cindy Jensen, executive coach and founder of Empower One, to come up to the stage. And we have Ambassador Claire Finlay, New Zealand ambassador to China, and Echo Jin, CFO of Greater China for Microsoft, and Vansi Mohantethi, President of Greater China and Mongolia for Coca-Cola. And then we have Li Meng Chuan, who is the head of HR for Jensen R&D, APAC China. Okay, welcome the panelists, please. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. How are you feeling at 3:55? Uh-oh. I think they're a little exhausted. I am so thrilled to be in conversation with you this afternoon. And we were fortunate. We had the opportunity to have a huddle about a week ago to get in the conversation about this important topic. So I love using the analogy. Imagine you are in our living room and listening in to this conversation. We're going to be talking about stories and hearing the stories of the leaders. And how many of you would see yourself in a leadership position? Raise your hand. How many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you would say, I'm pretty early in my career? And how many would say, yeah, I have a great long career under my belt? So the rest of you are just here to have a good time. So the reason I ask that question, because it doesn't matter what role you're in, because this conversation today is about you. It's not about what to do, but it's about how. Okay, so I ask you to lean in. So Ambassador, what a year, right? Not only somebody who's been leading a government in China, bilateral relations, the dealing not only with the issues of COVID as a leader. One of the things that I wanted to start talking about, because I think it's important to start to look at the leadership. How has leadership changed given what's been going on in the last year and a half? And would you mind sharing with us some of those decisions, some of those moments where you knew that I need to be a voice?
I'm glad that the time when we looked for sort of models of heroic leadership defined in a particular way, I think that's now behind us. I think what we've realised is that there are multiple models for leadership. And I've been really intrigued by the empirical analysis around the relevance of gender leadership to COVID outcomes. You know, women leaders at the national level, still, I think I mentioned it earlier, you know, 22 out of almost 200. But looking at the results that have been delivered around COVID responses by women leaders, quite well disciplined research and analysis with good methodology suggests that there is a difference in outcome based on the science and based on the averages that nationally, globally, women leaders tend to have seen better results in their countries. And you can think of countries, every country has had its ups and downs, but you think of countries like Germany or Finland, Iceland, Bangladesh actually with regard to COVID response. In my own country, we have essentially been COVID-free within our borders since May last year. We've had 2 small spikes during that period, but the lived experience, as in China, is living without significant COVID-related restriction. It's all at the border and keeping it out. We have a Prime Minister who speaks in terms of compassionate and strong leadership, that you can be empathetic and decisive. She's a leader who, in her first year in office at the UN in New York, at the General Assembly, spoke in terms of kindness in national policy and in foreign policy. And yes, I'm guessing some people may have heard that and been dismissive, but we've watched her style of leadership in our country. We've had some remarkably challenging events, obviously COVID, but also, you know, a horrific terrorist attack in my country a couple of years ago in 2019, in a country that had never experienced any form of terrorism at all. So she led through that into a unifying, inclusive approach that gained quite a bit of attention internationally. That wasn't what she was focused on. She was focused on leading us, her country, her team of 5 million that she talks about, but the impact was broader than New Zealand. And again, now we look at the outcomes so far with COVID, and I think we all walk humbly with COVID. I think we've all learnt that it's a very tricky and challenging foe, and it's an evolving foe given new variants that are now out and about. But the sense of uniting, bringing people together, communicating clearly, minimising confusion, setting clear goals have been central to that. But of course, putting aside the softer skills, you've got to be led by the science. And so it's been impressive watching how opaque circumstances, partial information, changing scientific findings as more knowledge is gained, have been managed into a policy that's maintained unity and delivered good results. And that was through a particular style of leadership. And I don't want to generalise about women's leadership. I think there are multiple models, but this has been one that's been effective.
It's interesting because when you talk about your Prime Minister, what pops in my mind is not the fact that she's a woman. It's the fact that, the stand she was prepared to take, the voice she was prepared to have. And she didn't look around and say, is this okay? And I think people around the world admired that. So thank you for sharing that.
Kia ora.
MJ, one of the things a lot of people talk about is building cultures, organizational cultures. And that can be challenging. How do we start? And J&J has been a fine example for that. So how does culture enable the best in people, in particular around diversity, inclusion and having the conversation?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Johnson & Johnson actually has a 135 years history. And at the founding moment in 1886, we actually have 14 members. And at that moment, we have 8 members actually are female employees. So that was very impressive when we had the company 133 years ago. J&J actually, when we talk about DEI, is not really the commitment, but it's part of the way how we live and how we work. I can give you probably 2, 3 examples. Before this role, I actually worked in Japan. So Japan is a market still, people value homogeneous culture, people, and it's extremely challenging for Japanese women return back to workplace, especially after they had baby. So we have, again, very similar as HP, we have parental leave for both new mom and father. We have flexible working hours, flexible working way. You can work from home right before the pandemic. But most importantly, we have a lot of initiatives to really engage our male employee. An example is on the Father's Day, we actually invited all the male employees who have daughters to come together and to talk about how can we create a truly inclusive environment for our daughters. So that really helped them to be truly open up their mind. And then they really aim to creating a great environment, a friendly